Think about the last meal you ate. The wheat in your bread. The corn in your cereal. The soy in almost every processed food you've touched today. The cotton in your shirt. The canola in the oil your food was cooked in. Now here's a question almost nobody asks. Who owns the seed that grew all of it? Not the farmer, not the government, not nature. 4 companies, just 4. Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and BASF. Between them, they control over 60% of the world's commercial seed supply. 60%, the genetic foundation of human civilization. Owned, patented, legally locked behind walls of intellectual property law so airtight that a farmer can go to court and lose for saving seeds from his own harvest that his family had planted for generations. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a documented, court-upheld, government-sanctioned reality. And it happens so gradually and so quietly that most of the world barely noticed. Let's go back to where it started. Because the story of how corporations came to own life itself begins with a single legal question that should have been answered differently. Can you patent a living thing? In 1980, the United States Supreme Court said yes. In a case called Diamond v. Chakrabarty, a scientist had engineered a bacterium that could break down crude oil. The question was whether a living organism could be treated as an invention and therefore patented. The court ruled 5-4 that it could. 1 vote. 1 decision. That unlocked everything that came after. Within years, corporations realized what this meant for agriculture. If you could engineer a plant, modify a single gene, add a protein, adjust a trait, you could patent it. And if you could patent it, you could own it. And if you owned it, you could control who used it, how they used it, and most importantly, you could make them pay you every single season they planted it. The seed, which had been a gift of nature and a tool of farmers for 10,000 years, became a product. Now, the companies that pushed hardest into this new world were chemical companies. This is a detail people miss, and it matters enormously. Bayer is a pharmaceutical and chemical giant. BASF is a chemical conglomerate. Syngenta, now owned by a Chinese state-backed corporation, grew out of the agrochemical divisions of Novartis and AstraZeneca. Corteva spun out of the merger of Dow Chemical and DuPont. These are not farming companies. They are chemical companies that got into the seed business. Why? Because chemicals and seeds, in their model, are the same product. You sell the farmer a genetically modified seed that is engineered to survive only when sprayed with a specific herbicide. Then you sell him the herbicide. Roundup-ready soybeans, engineered by Monsanto, now absorbed into Bayer, only survive when sprayed with glyphosate, which Monsanto also sold. The seed and the poison, bundled together, sold as a system, sold every single year, because the farmer cannot legally save the seeds and replant them. That's the chokehold. Let's be precise about what it looks like. Before this era, farmers had done the same thing for 10,000 years. You grow your crop, you harvest it, you save the best seeds, you replant them next season. You slowly, over generations, develop seeds that are adapted to your soil, your climate, your particular piece of land. This is how agriculture worked. This is how human civilization was fed. When you buy a patented seed today, you sign what is called a technology stewardship agreement. It's a contract. In it, you agree that you will not save seeds from your harvest. You will not replant them. You will not give them to another farmer. You will buy new seeds every single year from the company. If the company investigates you, and they do investigate and finds that you have saved seeds, you will be sued. Monsanto, before it was absorbed by Bayer, had a dedicated team of investigators whose only job was to find farmers who had saved patented seeds. They sued hundreds of them. Some of those farmers were not even customers. Their fields had been contaminated by wind-blown or insect-carried pollen from a neighbor's patented crop. The patented DNA had drifted into their field without their knowledge or consent, and they were still sued for patent infringement. The courts, in many cases, agreed with Monsanto. A Canadian farmer named Percy Schmeiser became famous for fighting this. He had grown canola for 50 years. Monsanto's Roundup-ready canola pollen contaminated his fields. He never bought their product. He never signed their contract. Monsanto sued him anyway. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled against him. He had infringed their patent, even though the contamination was not his doing. Think about that. A corporation engineers a seed. The seed's pollen blows across a fence. The DNA rewrites itself in the neighbor's crop, and the neighbor is the one who owes money. This is not ancient history. This is the legal structure that governs global agriculture right now. And it gets more concentrated. Between 2015 and 2018, the 6 largest agribusiness companies in the world collapsed into 4 through a series of mergers so large they required regulatory approval in over 30 countries. Dow and DuPont merged. Bayer absorbed Monsanto for $63 billion, the largest all-cash acquisition in corporate history at the time. Syngenta was purchased by ChemChina for $43 billion. In the span of 3 years, the seed and pesticide industry went from being somewhat competitive to being controlled by a cartel so tight that the United States Department of Justice required the merged companies to sell off portions of their business just to allow the deals to proceed. Even after those required divestitures, the consolidation was staggering. In corn seeds alone, the top 4 companies control more than 85% of the commercial market in the United States. In soybeans, it's similar. In cotton, even more concentrated. Now here is where the story takes a turn that sounds like something from a dystopian novel. Except it isn't fiction. Deep in the Arctic Ocean, on the island of Spitsbergen in Norway, roughly 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, there is a vault carved into a frozen mountain. It opened in 2008. It is called the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, and it is the most significant insurance policy in human history. Inside, as of now, are over 1.4 million seed samples from nearly every country on Earth. More than 6,000 plant species, wheat varieties that are centuries old, corn cultivars that exist nowhere else in the world, rice strains that fed the ancestors of billions of living people. It was built because the people who understood what was happening to the world's seed supply were scared. The biodiversity that feeds humanity is disappearing. As corporate monocultures spread vast fields of identical, patented, genetically uniform crops, the genetic variety that allowed agriculture to adapt to changing conditions is being lost. When a new blight emerges, when the climate shifts, when a pest evolves to defeat a single crop variety, genetic diversity is the defense. Without it, you have nothing. The Irish potato famine was not just a drought. It was a monoculture catastrophe. An entire nation had become dependent on a single variety of potato. When a fungal pathogen evolved that could destroy that variety, there was nothing else to fall back on. 1 million people died, 2 million fled. And that was in a world where seed diversity still existed in abundance. The vault in the Arctic exists because scientists, agronomists, and food security experts looked at the trajectory of the global seed industry, the patenting, the consolidation, the replacement of diverse local varieties with uniform commercial crops, and decided they needed to preserve what was left, just in case. Read that again. Governments built a doomsday vault in the Arctic to protect humanity from the consequences of what corporations are doing to the seed supply. Not from asteroid strikes, not from nuclear war, from corporate agriculture. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation contributed funding. So did the Rockefeller Foundation. So did the governments of Norway, the United States, the United Kingdom, and dozens of others. The vault is managed by a treaty organization called the Global Crop Diversity Trust. It operates like a safety deposit box for civilization. And the corporations, meanwhile, continue filing patents. As of recent years, they have begun patenting not just genetically modified plants, but naturally occurring plants that have been bred through conventional methods, plants that were developed by farmers and public researchers over decades. now claimed through subtle genetic language in patent applications. The European Patent Office has granted patents on naturally bred broccoli, naturally bred tomatoes, naturally bred barley. These are not engineered organisms. They are plants that existed in nature, now owned by a corporation, now requiring a licensing fee. The direction of travel here is clear, and it is accelerating. Consider what control over seeds actually means. Seeds are not widgets. Seeds are not software. Seeds are the upstream input of every food system on the planet. Whoever controls seeds controls what gets planted. Whoever controls what gets planted controls what gets eaten. Whoever controls what gets eaten controls every human being alive. This is not rhetorical. It is biological. It is agricultural. It is the most fundamental form of power that exists. Farmers in India, where Bt cotton, a genetically modified patented variety, came to dominate the cotton market, saw seed prices rise dramatically as the technology spread and alternatives disappeared. When the patent holder raised prices, farmers had nowhere else to go. The debt spirals that followed contributed to one of the most devastating agricultural crises in modern history. Farmers in the United States report that the cost of soybean seed has risen by over 300% since the introduction of patented varieties in the 1990s. Not because of inflation, not because of input costs, because of market power. When 4 companies control what you can plant, they decide what you pay. There is a response to all of this, growing slowly in the margins. Open source seed movements, seed libraries, public breeding programs at universities, farmers who quietly save heirloom varieties, operating in legal gray zones, preserving what the patent system is slowly erasing. The Svalbard Vault is the most dramatic symbol of this resistance, a monument to the understanding that what is being lost needs to be kept somewhere, by someone, for someday. But here is the bottom line. The food on your table began as a seed. That seed, with overwhelming probability, was sold by one of 4 companies. It was planted under a contract that prohibits the farmer from keeping it. It was engineered to depend on chemicals sold by the same company. The genetic variety it replaced the thousands of locally adapted, regionally specific, culturally embedded crop varieties that fed this world for millennia. Much of that is gone. What remains is in a frozen mountain in Norway, because the people who understand what is happening are worried enough to build a bunker. We patented life. We concentrated the ownership of that patent in 4 boardrooms, and then we built a vault at the end of the world, in case it all goes wrong. The question is not whether this is sustainable. It isn't. The question is what we do before the vault is all we have left.
Thanks for watching Macro Explainer. Subscribe for more clear breakdowns.